Good evening. Thank you so much for everyone joining us today. I am Emmy Henley, the Managing Director of the Reform Alliance. We are a nonprofit in Little Rock that focuses on education options for K-12 Arkansas students. We want to thank Secretary Oliva for joining us tonight. And we wanted to let you know that this will be recorded and we will post this later on our social media. We are so grateful to be joined by Secretary Oliva along with some members of his staff to answer some questions on the education freedom accounts that are a part of the LEARNS Act. So Secretary, if you'd like to introduce yourself or say anything to start.
Sure. Thank you, Emmy, and thank you for everybody they're taking time out of their busy lives and personal schedules to spend some time with us to talk about the LEARNS bill and maybe even get into a little bit of a state of the state and how some of these priorities set forth by the agency is going to lead to positive outcomes for students, because at the end of the day, that's where our focus is. And that's why we're all on this call today, because I truly believe we all are on this call because we have a vested interest in making sure we're creating the conditions that set up students for success. So I look forward to spending some time today in this little virtual town hall and doing a question and answer. And sometimes we may not know all the answers right now, but if we ask the right questions and we get connected with the right people, we can figure out anything as we move forward.
Absolutely. So like I said, we put this out as some information that parents were wondering about the education freedom programs. So we had a lot of questions submitted prior to the town hall tonight from parents in the communities that we are going to start with. If anyone has additional questions, you can use the question and answer option at the bottom of your screen to submit those, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible tonight. So just some general education freedom account questions that have to do with the application process. So of course, parents want to know when applications will open and how will families apply, if that will be online, a paper application.
Sure. So, I mean, if it's okay, maybe before we go a little bit into the nuances and details, if I can just spend a few minutes kind of giving an overview for all the parents on here.
Yeah.
To hear a little bit about what are the priorities for LEARNS? How did we get here? What is the ultimate goal? And then kind of maybe get into some of the nuances and details of what is it going to look like moving forward. So first, I want to say this is probably the most exciting time to engage in conversations around improving learning in the state of Arkansas, it probably ever since schools were established. And our state is making the biggest, boldest, innovative investment into improving opportunities for students. So I can tell you what gets me excited about engaging in this work is really looking at the vision of what is LEARNS and how did we get to LEARNS, and working with Governor Sanders and her team in understanding how this blueprint was developed. This was a long journey. This was a vision that came out of over 2 years of collaborative conversations with teachers, with parents, with principals, with business owners all over the state to say, as Governor Sanders was looking to make a run for the governorship, to say, I'm going to make improving learning and teaching and education in the state. I need to hear from the experts in the field, the boots on the grounds, the people that have concerns, to find out what are some of those best practices and strategies when we're going to put together a blueprint that is going to move the needle for improving outcomes in the state. And it was over 2 years in the making that blueprint evolved into what is known as the LEARNS bill and the LEARNS acronym. And what LEARNS really focuses on is improving literacy, empowering parents, accountability, readiness, networking, and safety. And when you look at the blueprint that came into the policy known as the LEARNS bill, each section of that LEARNS bill is built around improving all of those outcomes. And if we can improve literacy, if we empower parents, if we hold ourselves accountable, if we make sure students come to kindergarten ready to learn, and ready to be successful beyond high school, improving networking access to high quality internet and speed, while definitely improving and keeping our eye on best practices around school safety, we know that positive outcomes will happen. This investment is really at the heart of this investment is to improve the local public schools. When parents are looking for options and places to educate their children, the public school, the local neighborhood zip code school should be the first and best option for families. And most of the time, schools are going to do that and be those options and meet the needs of all the people in their community. Having high quality public schools in neighborhoods where people can live for multiple generations is the backbone of a community, and we need those schools to excel and thrive. But the reality is a one size fits all approach doesn't meet the needs of all students and all families. And if families are looking for other opportunities or have other needs to meet their own children's individual needs, we need to empower them and give them choice. And it's not just choice for choice sake. We need to give them high quality choice programs that are going to be a value that we know can be dedicated to making sure that when students are participating in choice and when parents are exercising their right to participate in choice options, that they're of high quality and they're going to see the outcomes in the students that they need. So when we're looking at implementing this bill and this vision, I can tell you, as someone that's traveled the majority of the state in the last 3 to 4 weeks, especially working through the legislative process and seeing the bill get signed into law, we made a commitment to visit every region. The state of Arkansas is divided from the public school component to 15 educational cooperatives that are made up of the local school districts in that area. We made a commitment to get to all 15 educational cooperatives, meet with superintendents, talk about the components of the bill, see what questions need to be answered, and how we can improve the systems and the conditions that we set up to lead to better outcomes for students. We know that when you look at where Arkansas ranks historically on some of the national assessments, when you see the number 45, 47, 42 next to our state's name, everybody on this call agrees that we can do better. And if we work together to set a common vision of how to improve learning, we're going to achieve that. That's what Learns does, is it puts everything into unified, coordinated space so that systems are aligned that are going to lead to positive outcomes for students. So I've been traveling the state, meeting with educational cooperatives. I've been meeting with stakeholder groups, have an opportunity to meet with different like Kiwanis's and Rotary groups. Almost anybody that's been able to invite me to their community, I welcome that. And if I can't make it, try to get somebody there to answer questions, because unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation about the intent of this bill and what this bill really does. So when I had an opportunity to get on tonight's call and connect directly with the team here and be able to talk to and listen to parents and answer questions, it was something that I welcomed. And I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to do that. So I think it's important to make sure everybody understands what the vision and what the spirit of what the Learns bill does. It's really about improving learning outcomes and making sure that we can be innovative in our approach to making that happen. Today, I think there's a lot of people's interest or people registered because this was advertised about questions around the educational freedom accounts and what does choice look like and what is the process for that going to be and how do I participate? How does the school qualify? So I can tell you that scholarship programs aren't new to the state of Arkansas. And a lot of people, I think, already don't even understand that there's already some established, high quality established scholarship programs for students and families that are looking for other opportunities. One of the probably the largest participant one in the state is called the Succeeds program. And that's really geared towards helping students with special needs. We often hear that private schools are going to close their doors to special needs students. We already have a scholarship program in the state that is specifically designed for supporting students with special needs. And it's a pretty successful program. So as we roll out the opportunities to participate in scholarship programs, a lot of that foundation's already been laid. And the Learns bill is building out on some of the success that we've seen. in moving forward. So kind of to start getting into the nuances about some of the questions that you have about what are the next steps and processes. Well, with a new bill becomes new policies for how you're going to implement that bill with fidelity. Those policies are historically established through the rulemaking process that goes to the State Board of Education. So we put out an open call statewide to work on the rulemaking process for the Learns bill. In fact, we identified kind of 6 work groups that we want to get established, and one of the work groups is the parent empowerment component, which is going to go through the rules of a lot of the questions, I think, and the nuances that you're asking to see how we want to move forward with the next steps. And the response so far has been overwhelmingly positive. I want to say we're close to 1,000 people have reached out to us and said we'd like to be a working member of one of the work groups. And obviously we can't have work groups with 1,000 people on it, but we plan on keeping everybody's information. We want to get work groups that are reflective of all regions throughout the state and all levels of education and parents and leaders, and go through that. So those workers we established, but if someone is interested in the work and doesn't get on a work group, they'll still have an opportunity to provide feedback on some of the drafts and rules. It's going to be open and transparent, and we're going to get that across the finish line. So to go back to the first question is, what is the process going to look like? Well, that's going to be established through state board rule, and in the legislation for a lot of the rules dictate that the process needs to be done by July 1st of 2024. But we know that the first year of the scholarship program, some of these rules are going to have to be expedited. So the first kind of work group sessions that we're really going to focus on and put together is establishing the process of how does a private school apply to participate in the program if they're not already participating in one of our current programs, or if I'm currently participating in a scholarship program, am I grandfathered in and all automatically qualified for the Learns program? Those nuances need to be spelled out in rule. There'll probably be some additional qualifications that we'll have to go through, and we'll establish the process, whether it's paper or pencil, whether it's electronic, whether it's in person. We want to make sure whatever process we establish or land on is meeting the needs and being flexible to the parents that we're trying to support and serve.
That's great. I think several of the questions that have been submitted, are from some of the Succeed Scholarship families. We have been working with them for several years. We are very familiar with some of the students that don't fit that one size fits all plan. So I think that we have a few here, and if they are part of the rules process, if you could just line that out, that would be great. And then if you do have just like some additional information, I think that would be helpful as well, if that works for you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so one of the questions was, will single parent families qualify?
Yeah, so if you look at the way the legislation is kind of laid out for participating in educational freedom accounts, it's kind of a phase-in approach, because we're building and we're expanding an existing programs when you look at scholarships that already exist, but we want to make sure we're able to expand it through a manner that makes success, so that we can make sure that it's set up to be successful. So in year one of the scholarship program, it's limited to 1% of the overall student population in the state could participate. And it targets students that are first time to kindergarten, or students that are currently participating in an F-rated school. There's some other kind of nuanced qualifications where it may be a student that's participating or experiencing in homelessness or foster programs, I believe is a component in that, or families of active military students or of active military families. They could qualify in year one. In year two, it expands a little bit more to it would include students that participated the previous year. They'll have the opportunity to continue participating in the upcoming following year, and bring in a new cohort of students and expand to DNS schools and open up. It goes up to about 3% is the cap for total student population to participate. Then in year three, it opens up eligibility. So it's not going to matter whether you're single parent, whether you're income based or student with special needs or needs different support or in a failing school, that if parents want to choose and participate in some other options that may best need to meet their family, they'll be able to apply. It will be limited, not based number on students that want to participate, but the legislature put in a categorical of a dollar amount, which is really important because you want to be able to sustain and balance budgets and make sure that you can handle these types of programs. So if the cap on the dollar amount gets reached, then the appropriation would be prorated based on the number of students. If more students want to participate in the program, then there are dollars that are available. But we'll be able to kind of monitor and see what participation rates are over the next couple of years as we're doing a kind of a slower scaling approach before it gets to a more open eligibility process. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor and watch.
Okay, great. So I know that you mentioned in the third year that there will be, it's open to everyone that wants to participate. And we do already have in Arkansas the philanthropic investment in Arkansas kids, which is the income-based scholarship.
Mm.
Are there income requirements for the first 2 years of the Education Freedom Account program?
The eligibility requirements that are outlined in the law are new to kindergarten, participating in a failing school, and some of those nuanced components. So that's the umbrella, and it's capped at 1% of the overall student population, but that would be the cap for people to qualify.
Some of the funding questions, I know you mentioned that there was a cap, the 1% and everything like that. Can students accumulate funds to be used later to supplement for college expenses, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's important for parents and the public to understand is there's going to be accountability and some guardrails put around participation in these programs. So when a parent wants to participate in a program, it's important to remember that nobody's forcing parents to participate in any of these programs. This is a pathway or an option that a parent that may choose for their children. There's nothing forcing private schools to participate in this program. This is something that they would say we agree to these conditions and guardrails and want to participate and accept students that are receiving educational freedom accounts. But it's important that when we have choice programs, they're quality programs. We don't want choice just to have choice. We want to have choice that's of value and quality. And part of the rules making process that we're going to engage in is building out accountability for these choice options. So if a private school wants to participate, there's going to be conditions that they meet, meaning that they're either accredited or working on accreditation, because just even to be eligible to work on being accredited means they've met a lot of criteria for their application to be considered. This isn't going to be somebody opening up a private school in their shed and thinking that they're going to start a school next year and start receiving money for students. That's not what this is about. This is about giving high quality choice opportunities for students and families. So there's going to be an accountability component. Students are going to have to participate in a national standardized assessment. We're going to need to be able to report how students are doing, because if parents are going to make informed decisions about environments that may work best for their children, they need to know how the students are performing in those schools. So the rules making process is going to move forward and start identifying what that is.
So I know that some of this will depend on the rules, as you said, but I want to make sure that we're just getting as much information as we can to some of these parents. So it says, can private school students use the money for things such as books, sports expenses at
Right.
school, uniforms in the first year, or will the funding depend on the tuition rate of the private school?
Yeah. So, and you did ask me that about the dollars and how the account works. And so the intention or the way that it's designed, and one of the accountability components that are put in there is that private schools currently already established can't jack up their tuition rates to try to attain more dollars. And the way the education freedom account's designed is that a student would qualify and they would receive up to 90% of the previous year's foundation funding. So that foundation funding is set by the legislature, and it's basically a start of where the dollars that are determined to go to the district to educate a student begins. Last year, I want to say it was just around $7,000. I don't have the exact dollar amount in front of me. So the scholarship amount of dollars that would be eligible to a student would be 90% of the foundation funding. That would go into an educational account. So if the tuition at the private school is lower than that, then those remaining dollars would stay in that student's account, because sometimes it may be the tuition's a different rate at elementary school. It may look a little different at a middle school or even a high school. So those dollars would stay in that account with that student until they exit the program. If a student exits the program or graduates from school, any dollars that weren't used towards paying those tuitions or the additional costs, those additional eligible costs that'll be determined through state board rule, would automatically revert back to the state.
When do parents apply for this education freedom account? Much like the Succeed Scholarship, do they have to apply to the private school first, or do they do that after they're accepted for the Learns Plan or the education freedom accounts?
So those are one of those kind of technical nuances that we've definitely prioritized, because the reality is parents are making decisions about educational opportunities for next year now, especially if you're new to school or looking to bring a child to kindergarten, or most of the times if as we're finishing out a school year, you're thinking about in the summer where you're going to transition. So this is why we're acting with urgency around forming the work groups to work on those nuances to determine whether they need to apply first or find a school first or have both signed off first before it's issued and awarded. But our hope is to be able to start getting information out to parents as early as next month. It's already March and April, to have these systems in place before the next fiscal year begins, because with August, the middle of August, most schools opening in the fall, we need to have these processes in place so parents can have a firm understanding where their children are going to go, and if they're choosing to participate in a scholarship program, that the dollars will be able to be allocated accordingly.
Right. Thank you. So some of the other questions I believe will fall under some of the information that you've already given us. So they're asking, will students be able to transfer between private schools during the school year? And if so, is there a limit, or what does the process look like for that?
Yeah, so those are some of those nuanced questions that we get, and you know, people change schools in the middle of school year for many reasons, and it shouldn't be that we're just shopping around or trying to exploit a system. But if families are moving, we want them to limit their ability to participate in any choice program, whether it's magnet programs within the schools, whether it's charter school, whether it's virtual school, whether it's homeschool, whether it's private school. Parents need to have the flexibility to find the right environment that works best for them. That's probably even one of the reasons why payments to private schools, if you're going from private school to private school, are being done on a quarterly basis. Because if you stop participating in one school and want to go to another school, if we're going to transfer that program, we want to make sure the dollars are going to support the student. And that's what this initiative is about. And those are those details that we're going to work out and iron out in rules.
Okay. So I know that we talked about the Succeed Scholarship Program, and then the education freedom accounts are open to students with learning disabilities. But is there anything else in the Learns Act that will affect children who have specific learning disabilities?
Well, I think it's important that when you look at dealing with students with learning disabilities or special education, that there's federal laws that are in place. The main one is known as Individual Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. There isn't any state law, and there's nothing in Learns that could supersede those federal laws. So when you talk about some of the main provisions that are outlined in IDEA, such as a terminology called FAPE, and that's a free and appropriate public education, those provisions aren't going away. Parents will still have procedural safeguards, and they will have their rights that are afforded to them, and decisions about levels of services for students that qualify for an individualized education plan those decisions will still happen in a multidisciplinary meeting that includes educators, parent, people that have vested interest in determining the support and services that a child needs. So special education students, it's not a one size fits all for those folks, especially because every student has an individualized education plan that's written for that child, and determining the appropriate environment that that student would participate in receiving learning supports or related services. It may be speech therapy or physical therapy. Those are all going to be determined with the parent in the IEP meeting, and those are the choices that people are going to navigate through when determining the environment that works best for their child.
Great, thank you. So we have a military family that says that they did not use the Succeed Scholarship last year, and they're wondering if they can apply for it coming up. I know that there are a couple different qualifiers in the first 2 years that are regarding military families. Is that correct?
Well, I think you mentioned Succeed, but if in year one, if you're an active military parent, your child could be eligible to apply for the Educational Freedom Account. Then year two, it would still include active military, but also expand to first responders. So that's families who may work in law enforcement or firefighters and some of those other components. So if they were transferred through military purposes, there may be an opportunity for them to qualify in year one.
Okay, perfect. So that would just be like the active duty and everything.
Mhm.
So we also had some questions from some micro schools and home schools about the education freedom accounts. So they are asking if they are going to be eligible in the first year if they qualify under one of those first eligibility categories.
Yeah, so the homeschool provision is a little bit different when it comes to educational freedom accounts, and in fact, they don't really start having a process to apply for in year one. I haven't looked at this in a while, but I want to say that starts in year two, and I get all the years nuanced when I don't have them written down in front of me. But I want to say for the 24-25 school year, the rules around that would be set up for how to qualify for homeschool support. And so like you mentioned the term learning pods, which is kind of taken off on a little bit of a national trend where maybe some families are working together to maybe hire a teacher or utilize an opportunity to buy curriculum or support for their homeschool learning provision. So the intent is that families would be able to have that flexibility and have those opportunities to do that. And I want to go back to that there will not be direct payments to these families, and there will be an accountability provision for students participating in those programs. And what constitutes an educational related expense will be solidified through rules, and it'll be identified to support curriculum and books and necessary school supplies. It's not going to let somebody buy a PlayStation and say that that's of an educational value. The law is very specific about the types of support that in this environment, in this space, dollars can be utilized for. So we're going to hold people accountable. And if we find that people are misusing funds, we're going to go after them to the full extent that we can, because we're not going to let some bad actors ruin a great program. And we're going to make sure through the rules that those guardrails and provisions are set up, that the dollars are going where they're intended, and that students are learning. And if we find fraud, misuse, and abuse, we're going to go after that. And parents may lose their eligibility depending on the actions they're taking to even participate in the program.
Absolutely. So on that, I know that you said that you will define further in the rules process what specifically some of these details will include, but they are wondering if families will be able to submit a request for programs or curriculum that they want to use and what that process might look like.
Yeah, and we're gonna work on that. I think it's probably gonna go a little bit both ways. Where the agency may identify um, curriculums or resources that would automatically qualify, or if there's something that's not on a already vetted list, can a parent, make a request to put it on a vetted list or get a reimbursement if they can prove that there's the educational value that it needs. So I think in that space, definitely, when we get the work groups together, if you have some parents that are leaders in this arena, we want to make sure to get them on the work committee that would know this. I think we're open to all these options, and we want to be flexible and accommodating, but we want to have those proper guardrails and controls as well.
Right. And that will be something that we send out to parents, is just that working group link so they can sign up for that. I know that we've sent it out previously, but we'll send it out after this call as well. So someone has asked, how will the applications be evaluated once they are received? I guess just initially for the education freedom accounts, and will any application that meets the qualifying criteria in LEARNS automatically be accepted?
So that's another great question, and I, they'll as we go through the rulemaking process, that's going to be detailed. But I would say, for me right now, that there needs to be a vetting process, especially if somebody has misused this program previously and they try to reapply. They shouldn't just automatically apply. We need to make sure that when an application comes in, that it's been vetted, that it's a legitimate application, and that we're putting in those guardrails to reduce fraud and waste and misuse and abuse. And if people think that it's just going to be a rubber stamp, apply here, start getting money, set up a fake school, they have another thing coming for them. This is going to be a robust process to ensure that we're implementing these programs with integrity and fidelity. So what that looks like, how thorough that is to be determined, but those applications are going to be reviewed and they're going to be vetted. They're not going to be rubber stamped.
Right. Kind of in that accountability standard, we had someone submit the question, will there be more regulations for homeschoolers?
So I'm not sure if I know what more regulations mean or what less regulations mean, but if a parent chooses the homeschool option, there's a reason that they've done that. When it comes to a parent choosing a homeschool option and having access to an educational freedom account, there'll be a little bit more expectation as far as the student participating in a standardized assessment, that that there's a process for evaluating where the expenses are going and make sure that they're being used appropriately. So you have parents that want to choose homeschool and they have that ability and right to do that. But then there's also the ability to choose homeschool and participate in educational freedom account. There's going to be a little bit of guardrails and expectations for parents that are choosing to stay in homeschool and have access to that account as well. So it'll look different than just choosing homeschool.
Okay, so if they choose to use the program, there will be some testing requirements, but if they don't choose and still choose to homeschool, it will look the same as it was previously.
That's correct.
Okay. So if the homeschooling parents can't receive those funds directly, and this is a little bit on some of the topics that we've covered already, how will they use those funds? So will you work with?
Well, that's why we need at least a year for implementation, because
Mhm.
the intent is to do a competitive procurement to find a vendor or somebody that can work in this space to help the disbursement and the methodologies of those dollars if we need it. Our hope is that we can use staff that we currently have and start to scale up some of these programs, but we need to have some flexibility in designing how those methodologies will work and how those payments will work. So we're doing an analysis of that now, and then if we need to seek some additional support and assistance, we have the time and the runway to do that.
So someone did submit, why only 90% for the funding amount, for the allocated amount for the education freedom accounts next year? Where does the other 10% go?
So if you look at kind of that foundation formula and you look at how districts receive funding, it starts with that foundation amount. But then on top of that, there's it's called a matrix, and it's got a bunch of different categories that make up a bunch of different variables based on the types of students that are being served in a school district, where the school district is, the size of the school district, and that comes up with an overall determination of a dollar amount. So even though the foundation, let's just use round numbers, let's say it's $7,000 per student, the school, when that foundation amount gets factored into the matrix, overall may get, say, $12,000 for a student or just a little bit over it. The legislature has designated that for students that participate in the scholarship program, they would get 90 up to 90% of the foundation funding to the private school. The remaining 10% and the remaining dollars in the matrix or categorical would stay with the local school district. Because they have, when you look at some of the school districts operating and scale and the service they provide, they would keep those dollars. It would stay with the school district.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to, I think we're going to take one more question, and then I'll just ask you if you have anything that you want to add that we didn't touch on. So this is regarding schools that are participating in the scholarships. So will a current participating school in the Succeed Scholarship Program or the Philanthropic Investment Scholarship automatically transition into the Education Freedom accounts, or do they need to sign something saying that they want to transition?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that's a good place to start when we look at opening up opportunities for parents to participate in education freedom accounts, because they have already established the criteria and set up the success to accept students on various different scholarship programs. So the likeliness of getting those schools qualified in an expeditious manner is really high. I don't think at this point we would say that they're automatically grandfathered in. I think there'd be some assurances from the private schools that they're still going to meet the laws and expectations with the new scholarship program, and make sure they meet the guardrails and parameters, because it's a little bit different. Every scholarship program is different, so they're not just going to walk into being eligible. But I feel like once we establish that formal criteria, they'll be able to qualify in a pretty expeditious manner because they already have a proven track record of success.
Good. Well, we are definitely excited to help as we can with that transition process. Is there anything that we did not touch on tonight that you wanted to just add about the Education Freedom accounts or the LEARNS Act in general?
Well, I just think overall, I just appreciate everybody participating, and I've seen kind of the Q&A bar ask a lot of questions, and some of them are really personal questions to a family, so it's hard to respond to some individual questions in a forum like this. But I think it's important for people on the call to know that we're going to be able to capture all these questions and work on responses. And as we identify maybe a Q&A theme document, we can be able to put that together, and we want to post that and share that in many venues. And I also just want to make sure everybody knows that we appreciate you coming on and asking these questions, and knowing that you take time out of your day shows that you really care. And I've been all over the state. I haven't met one teacher, one principal, one superintendent, one parent that ever said we don't want what's best for children. We're all here for the same reason, because we all want what's best for children. And that may look a little bit different than what it is now. But when we build out these systems and we empower parents and we give school districts the support they need, we know we're going to see learning improve. And when learning improves statewide, we're going to see the state thrive. And while we may not have all the answers for everybody today, we'll get there. We'll get these programs up and running. And there may be some hiccups along the way. So I always want to ask for people's patience as we're building out programs for scale. But at the end of the day, this is about being focused on students and not systems. And when we're focused and having conversations about students, everybody wins. So I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm excited to engage in future forums like this. I think there's a lot of value and that this is worthwhile. And I really appreciate you helping to set this up.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you coming on and answering questions and just providing some additional information. Just as a reminder to all the participants, we will be sending out an email after this with a form where you can submit additional questions. You will also have that link to the working group. And then if you don't have the answers that you wanted tonight, we also set up an email where you can send to questions@thereformalliance.org. So thank you again, Secretary Oliva, and then we hope everyone has a great night.
Take care.